Good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here tonight for a Tuesday, November 16th, 2021 Board of Supervisors meeting for Lower Paxton Township. It's just a little bit before we'll start here, and for the benefit of our viewing audience, I wanted to give a quick run-through of our agenda for this evening. My name is Sam Miller. I'm an Assistant Township Manager and Finance Director here at the Township, and welcome everyone. For those watching via television this evening, just a quick run-through of the items of business that the board will be taking action on this evening. Under old business, we have an action on Ordinance 21-08, which will amend the code of the Lower Paxton Township, Chapter 165 for solid waste. Under new business, we have a couple different actions. First, we will have an action to approve a master lease purchase agreement for a stainless steel body and Monroe plow spreader and lighting for a plow truck, as well as an action to authorize the advertisement of the proposed township budgets for the general, state aid, general improvement, and fire tax and equipment funds for our period of public inspection. Under subdivision and land development, we have a couple actions. First will be a public hearing and an action in relation to approving Ordinance 21-06, and that would amend Chapter 203 of the Zoning Ordinance, Section 303A, to rezone land from the R1 Low-Density Residential District to the IN Institutional District. And then we will have two actions on the agenda for Wind Chase 3, the first being an action on a preliminary final subdivision plan for Wind Chase 3, plan number 21-14. The second action would be in relation to Resolution 21-27, which will be approving the Wind Chase 3 planning module for sewer. And then finally, we'll have authorization for payment of bills for the township and authority, and then any announcements and adjournment. So thank you for being here.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. We'll call this meeting of the Lower Paxton Township Board of Supervisors to order. I'd like to ask everyone to please rise. Supervisor Judd will lead us in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We'll move now to the approval of minutes of the September 7th, 2021 budget workshop meeting. Is there a motion to approve those minutes?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the minutes for September 7th, 2021 budget workshop meeting.
So moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. I would like to announce prior to this meeting, the Board of Supervisors did meet in executive session to discuss a personnel issue, and we will be meeting following in executive session. This is the time set aside for public comment. Public comment is for an item not on the agenda. If you wish to speak to an agenda item, we will have public comment on that agenda item at that time. So would anybody like to address the board on an item not on the agenda this evening? Would anybody like to address the board on an item not on the agenda? Okay, seeing none. Chairman and board member comments. Board members, do you have any comments this evening?
Mr. Chairman, I would like to announce that last Wednesday night we had a trap, neuter, and release program here for our residents. The board started that about 2 years ago. We had 23 people in attendance, and just want to let you know the program is working. Over the past 2 years, we prevented over 200 to 300 kittens from being born. So thank you for the residents that did show up, that are willing to volunteer and help the volunteers that we already have for our TNR program. Last night I attended the Council of Government meeting as your delegate here in the township. We had the Cumberland County radio conversion public safety director there, and he talked about how they're converting all of their radios to Motorola's. Luckily for us in Dauphin County, we have already converted ours to Motorola's. We also had somebody there from their public safety talk about the SAFER grant that the Council of Government has received. And we are very fortunate here. Director Kashiba last year applied for the grant, and we were awarded it. What it is for our volunteer fire companies to do some retention. It'll pay for some college credits, tuition, some health insurance. It's just to try and keep the retention of the volunteers that we have in the 3 fire companies here in the township. And another reminder, tomorrow night I'll be speaking with the Girl Scouts here in this room, 6 and 7-year-olds. So, Mr. Henry, they will be sitting in your chair.
Ah, very good. Any other board member comments? Seeing none, the manager's report.
Nothing specific to report, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. We'll now move to old business. We need to take action on Ordinance 21-08, this amending the Code of the Lower Paxton Township, Chapter 165, Solid Waste. And Mr. Stein, will you be handling a hearing for us on this matter?
This one won't need.
Will
a
not
public
require hearing? Okay. We have before us the ordinance. We discussed this at our workshop last week. Do we have any questions relative to this ordinance? Update. Seeing none, any public questions? Okay, is there a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion that we amend Ordinance 2021-08, the Code of the Lower Paxton Township, Chapter 165, Solid Waste.
So moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
This takes us to new business. We need to take action to approve a master lease purchase agreement with ROC Leasing LLC, doing business as real lease for a 2022 International, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I'll let the person making the motion give all the details. You had in your packet all the information relative to this lease. Do we have any questions for Mr. Miller relative to this?
Mr. Merrill, I have a question. It says Master Lease Purchase Agreement dated as of February 12th, 2018. So that was 3 years ago. Can you just explain a little bit where we are till today?
Sure. In relation to leasing companies, typically they'll execute a master lease agreement, which would cover the larger terms of a relationship. And then they would just do addendums to that master agreement anytime we would do a supplemental lease. That helps them get, I guess, more of the legal caveats and structure out with that first agreement. And then really what we're doing is we're just amending it to tack on another vehicle to the master agreement schedule.
Okay, great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions, board members? Okay, seeing none, would somebody like to make a motion?
I'll take a stab.
Yeah, this is a long one.
Yeah. I'd like to make a motion to approve a master lease purchase agreement with ROC Leasing LLC, DBA, real lease for a 2022 International HV513 SFA cab and chassis with upfitting Henderson 201 stainless steel body, including Monroe plow, spreader, and lighting. Lighting, I'm sorry, not lighting. Lighting.
Lightning costs more.
We are
Lighting.
hoping that lightning will not be involved.
Lighting.
Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
We need to take action to authorize the advertisement of the 2022 proposed township budgets for the general, state aid, general improvement, and fire tax and equipment funds for public inspection. And Mr. Miller, in addition to your hat as assistant manager, you are the budget director. Do you have any comments you would like to make? These items will be posted on our website for anybody and everybody who wishes to review them to do so, with action scheduled for mid-December.
No, I would only say that obviously this culminates a lot of public meetings that have been held to this date with department heads presenting their individual department budgets, and then ultimately pulling those to compile them together for the ultimate budget being proposed. And so while we put that in a public inspection period, it allows the public to inspect the budget and ask any questions they have in relation to that over a period of time before the township will work with any final budget revisions as we continue to get more information in from vendors and suppliers and trend our revenues to the point we will have a final budget presentation and adoption in December.
Mm-hmm. So it is the preliminary budget. It is a work in progress. I would like to say one of the hallmarks of this budget and a series of processes this board and this township staff are going through, we are undertaking 3 different planning programs. As we're all aware, the last 2 years have been anything but normal. It's been very volatile, both with expenses and revenue. we've been fortunate to come through it without having to raise general fund property taxes. Going forward, we're going to do a comprehensive review of all of our budgeting and forecasting, looking ahead, 4 to 5 years. And we have received a state planning grant so that as we emerge from the COVID-19 pandemic, we can look ahead for half a decade and plan ahead and have an idea where we're headed overall with a horizon ahead of us in planning. Our Parks and Rec Department has also received a planning grant that will allow us to position ourselves to apply for a wide range of state grants to down the road do some additions and enhancements to our park system. And third, with the fire tax and plan, we've used that money primarily in the past for the purchase of apparatus for our 3 fire departments. We all know that the number of volunteers nationally and statewide has continued to dwindle. Every municipality in Pennsylvania that relies on volunteers, we all know that at some point in the future, we're going to have to supplement those volunteers. So we are going to take funds from that particular fund in order to do some comprehensive planning and look at where we are with our 3 volunteer fire departments and the volunteers we have and staffing needs going forward, and develop a plan for how the township will be able to ensure that we have the appropriate number of people to respond to fire emergencies, which we have been blessed to have in the past as volunteers, and we're in good shape right now. But going forward, this is going to be an issue, so we want to plan now to position ourselves for it. So over the next year, a lot of planning is going to take place, and all of those funds are incorporated in this budget document in one way or another. So we invite anybody interested to go to our website, and you can look at all the details. So we do need a motion to authorize the advertisement of the 2022 proposed budgets. Is there a motion to do so?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve action to authorize the advertisement of the 2022 proposed township budgets for the general, state aid, general improvement, and fire tax and equipment funds for public inspection.
So moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Thank you. And now we move to subdivision and land development. We have before us action to approve Ordinance 21-06, amending Chapter 203 of the zoning ordinance, Section 303.A, to rezone land from the R1 low-density residential district to the IN institutional district. And so, Mrs. Zerby, will you be handling this, or will Mr. Miller or Mr. Stein? We're just going to go directly to the hearing?
Sure.
All right.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a time and date set for the public hearing on Ordinance 21-06, which would amend Chapter 203 of the zoning ordinance, Section 303A, to rezone land from the R1 low-density residential district to the IN institutional district. Mr. Lucas, are you ready to fill us in on the rezoning?
Yes. Thank you. My name is Ron Lucas, attorney with Stevens & Lee in Harrisburg. Thank you. I'd like to explain our rezoning request before the board. Vanguard Realty Group owns property on Colonial Road. We have get our PDF up maybe. This is the memo, I think, from staff. If you get our PDF of the exhibits, perhaps.
That's the other attachment.
There you go.
There we go. Okay. This is a sketch plan. I'll get to this last, but I'll do it now. This is what we're proposed to do: residential retirement development, permitted use in the institutional district. This shows Colonial Road. It's kind of like, this really should be turned on its, if we could. But Colonial Road is on the upper part there, the curve, S-curve. Up in the upper right-hand portion of it, that's Pythian Lutheran Church on Colonial Road. What we're proposing to do is residential retirement development permitted. Those will be townhomes, villas. The proposal is 2 access points to Colonial Road. We have Jay States from Grove Miller Engineering, a traffic engineer, who can answer any questions about that. We're proposing these to be perhaps condominium units within there, and at this point, there's proposed to be private streets. This sketch, other than the one we filed originally, shows some of the requirements for this district. It'll be part of the land development plan, but it's the focal point, which we show on here in the center green area. I don't have a pointer with me, but in this area here, buffers along Colonial Road. There are sidewalks throughout. There are walking paths in there. So that'll all be part of the land development plan. This is a sketch, but we can show, we show we can comply with all those standards in the ordinance for residential retirement district. If we could go to the next slide, please. Well, this is the, from the township's 2008 comprehensive plan. This shows the developmental area, and our area is near the interchange of Interstates 81 and 83. This is the interchange area right here. This is Colonial Road, and this is the area we're talking here, which is shown on this plan, this sheet, as developable land, and it's developable land. If we could go to the next.
Mr. Lucas, can I just ask you a question? You said 2008?
2018.
Oh,
Excuse
okay.
me, sorry.
I was going to say, because we
misspoke.
just updated it, and I was like,
I know,
okay.
yes, I apologize.
Okay, no problem.
And this shows the, get it focused here, here we are here. This shows the rezoning in this area.
It's,
On the road, here's institutional here. Business campus is behind it. This is the area to be rezoned right here. Colonial Road comes here. There's neighborhood commercial here, business campus behind, institutional, 2 tracks there. And these are the 2 tracks. We're talking about rezoning to institutional, R1 today. The business campus has the 3 office buildings that you see along Interstate 81 right after the interchange there. So that's what's in that area. There's also R3 down closer around Devonshire, south of Devonshire here. But that shows, and we identified it here. We, on the land use plan, these 2 properties are identified as S, Courage Senior Housing. And that's what we're proposing, 55-plus community. So that's on your development plan, in the comprehensive plan. If we could move on, show what. Okay, this shows the properties. Once again, we're kind of turned on the side. We apologize for this, but I think that's how the drawings work.
Like this?
There we go, thank you. Once again, Colonial Road is here. This was the old Colonial Road. You can see there's like a 1-lane blacktop still left there. And this is when PennDOT realigned it years ago. There's the church up here. These properties, this one here and this one here, are zoned institutional. And we're talking about a combination of about 33 acres between those 2 properties. The 2 properties requesting rezoning is this one here and this one there. They are zoned R1, these are zoned institutional. We have the business campus over here. We have the neighborhood commercial with the strip center down there. So with the comprehensive plan, it's shown as future developable area. It's shown as Courage Senior Housing. And we think it's consistent with the zoning to the north and consistent with the zoning behind it, the business campus, which is more intensive actually. So that's the area for rezoning. We have approximately 15 acres of those 2 properties, and then we have the 33 acres already zoned. And I think these areas were in Dauphin County Comprehensive Plan, which has it as growth area. That's all we can show. It shows growth area in this whole area corridor of, at least on the west side of Colonial Road. But that shows the properties. This area, in 2007, the township approved a plan for a residential retirement development under the overlay in R1 at that time. At that time, there were 163 townhomes and 210 bed nursing home, equivalent of 233 dwelling units. And that was just on that upper 30 acres. That was just on that part, not the entire 49 acres approximately. That plan didn't go ahead because of the crash. That had about 7.7 dwelling units per acre density. 2019, an engineering firm, local engineering firm, did a sketch for Mr. Kessler of the property. And if existing, if it was rezoned, 107 townhouses, 129-bed nursing home with 43 equivalent dwelling units, 102 dwelling units in a 5-story apartment building, so about 252 dwelling unit equivalents, or about 4.3 dwelling units per acre on the total tract. Then Williams Engineering, which is one who's been doing these drawings, did a by right sketch this year, or earlier in 2021, and with the combination of the institutional and R1, they determined that you could do 37 single-family detached dwellings in the R1, and the 162 townhouses, 120 4-story apartment, dwelling in a 4-story apartment building, and then same thing, a nursing home again, 150 beds or equivalent of 50 dwelling units under your ordinance weights. So that's 309 dwelling units by right as it is today, which would be approximately 7.53 dwelling units per acre. So what we're proposing, if it's rezoned to institutional, is combine the 4 properties, do one development. It would have no more than 270 dwelling units. Our sketch shows 249. And there'd be no commercial, no high-rise apartment buildings, and no nursing home. We talked at the Zoning Planning Commission about this, and the County Planning Commission raised the question if it's rezoned. We prepared a declaration of restrictive covenants. And that declaration is executed. It's in the hands of your solicitor. It is. We even provide a check for recording. That is provided that if it is rezoned, he has the authorization to record it, provided there's no procedural appeal directly from the adoption of the ordinance. So we're committing to that density, not to have a high-rise apartment building, not to have the couple hundred dwelling units, and to reduce that density. The idea here is 2-story townhomes, cottages or townhomes that are, those of us that are over 55, first floor master living and maybe 1 or 2 bedrooms upstairs. And that's the type of what we're looking for. And we do have a concept plan of a sketch that a builder, Mr. Kessler's been working with. We provided, that's from Connie, yeah, there it is. And here we go, thank you. That's a sketch of what we think a possible, how that could be. Garages, the houses behind them, 2-story. The dormers are decorative. I ask about that. They're more decorative to provide light, skylights, or just to be decorative in that situation. That's very quickly. I apologize if I spoke too quickly, but I don't want to just dwell on it. But basically, it's zoned today. It can be developed, a combination with a lot of dwelling units, nursing home, apartment building. The idea here is just combine the properties, develop a 55-plus community under your residential retirement development. We can comply with the standards in there, which we will have to go through land development process with the township. It's consistent with your comprehensive plan, with the county comprehensive plan. Your planning commission recommended approval on November 10th. The county plan commission recommended approval on November 1st. So we think it provides a use that, from a standpoint of density and intense development, it's not that type of a development. We're not putting apartment buildings or something that really intense there. And we're not proposing a nursing home there, which would have more, let's say, capacity, or, residents aren't driving, that's true, but take up more land usually with something like that, or it becomes multi-story. So we do have Jay States here, our traffic engineer from Grove Miller. At the Planning Commission meeting, there were some questions, so we wanted Jay to be able to answer any questions, but he can very briefly summarize the traffic generation from this type of use, and the fact that they've looked at the fact that we have access, sufficient site distance to provide our driveways there. So if I ask Jay to come up and address those issues for you.
Good evening. As Ron mentioned, I'm Jay States with Grove Miller Engineering. We were involved in this project in a couple different ways. Initially, Eric had us look at more of a traffic assessment of what was being proposed with the proposed zoning, looking at site distance from the driveways, highway capacity to see what kind of level of service the driveways would operate, whether we needed turn lanes or even a traffic signal, which based on this proposed dwelling units for this rezoning, we would not need any traffic signal. Where our volumes are low enough that we wouldn't have enough side street traffic to justify a signal, even if we wanted one. PennDOT wouldn't authorize that. Based on this level of units with this use, we're not going to need turn lanes along Colonial Road. So we went through in August and prepared a traffic assessment that documented all the analyses. Shortly thereafter, Eric had said, what if we take a look at some different scenarios as far as trip generation? What about what we're proposing here and compare that to a by right plan, compare it to the concept plan that had some retail mixed into it, and then also based on the plan that was approved back in 2007. When we looked at that comparison and put it in a memo, the by right plan compared to this plan, we're a third of the traffic compared to the by right plan. For instance, just to give some rough numbers, we're looking at generating right around 50 trips in the morning and 50 in the afternoon by this development, whereas a by right plan would be about 150 in the morning and about 185 in the afternoon. So we're considerably less traffic. Obviously, if we look at a concept that involves retail, we're a lot higher, and then that could facilitate the need for improvements, which is not what we're looking at. We've done a lot of analyses to look at whether these improvements are required along Colonial Road. They're not for this development. Again, this is about a third of what the by right plan would generate. We don't suspect there's going to be any impact. We're talking in directional, probably less than a trip a minute, or every minute during the peak hours. Not much of an impact to the north or south. Other than that, be available to answer any questions specific to traffic, but that comparison regarding the trip generation was one of the key aspects that we thought would be a good point to reference.
So you're saying your peak hours are between 7 and 8?
Typically, the peak hour would be between 7 and 8 in the morning, and then the afternoon would be probably one of the hours between 4 and 6 p.m.
Because you're saying 249 townhouses, and it is a 55 plus, and a lot of those people will probably be working another 10 years. So I'm just trying to figure out how you came up with 50 in the morning and 50 at night.
We're basically using the Institute of Transportation Engineers trip generation manual. We're using the published data that we would be required to submit for township and PennDOT approval. So we're looking at a senior housing townhouse land use as opposed to a traditional single family that may have teenage young adult drivers with that.
Okay, because remember, seniors leave the house more during the day than if, younger that are just leaving in the morning and coming back at nighttime.
Correct. And even looking at the daily trips from the trip generation analysis, this development would generate a little less than 750 trips per day, whereas a by right would generate about 2,400 trips per day. So we're still around that third of the traffic.
Okay.
Any board members have any other questions for the applicant or the engineer?
I just have one for Mr. Lucas. I've been asking for this for a CCRC because our residents do not want to leave the township. Is there any thinking that you would think about that, Eric? I know you were looking to do it prior. Yeah.
Sure.
My name is Eric Kessler, President of Vanguard Realty Group. CCRC, the cold hard fact is this land is just not enough for a CCRC. This land in 07 was approved, as Ron said, just the upper level. The year after it was approved is when I purchased the lower lots. The one reality is the big lower lot is really going to be stormwater, so we're not even going to be utilizing that for housing. But to do anything with two different zoning districts is really tough. Different ordinances, different requirements. And this happens to be two parcels of R1 as an island surrounded by commercial neighborhood, business campus, institutional.
Real quick, can you explain the acronym you used since we're talking about?
Oh, CCRC,
Okay.
oh my gosh, Community Care Retirement Community.
Okay, go ahead.
It's basically
Continual
looked
Care
at.
Retirement Community.
Yeah, it's basically looked at as a larger community that might provide a community building, might even have medical facilities.
On site, yeah, I got you.
Well, my main thing was like, I'm looking at Messiah Village, Masonic Village, Bethany Village.
They're all
which-
huge. That's a quick differentiation.
Yeah, but you wouldn't have to be as big as what they have, but you would have 3 levels of care where someone would go in and maybe have a cottage, an apartment. They could get assisted living, and then if they got really bad, then they could go to the skilled care.
I agree. Just for a little point, I sat for 23 years as a board member for an international independent living, assisted living organization, as well as I've been involved with a number of assisted living. The reality, the board never likes to talk about dollars. Well, I'm gonna. The reality is with 49 acres, a large part of that in the lower right as we look is not buildable or not going to be built upon. And the township also wants a big, I think they use central focus open area. There's not a lot left. So to provide the facilities that you would like, A, they're going to have to be vertical. Small footprint, but up high. They're going to generate a lot of traffic. The first issue with this development, in my mind, both to Ron, to Jay, is traffic, 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 and more traffic. So that was really the guiding light. The CCRC you're talking about or referencing will generate huge amount of traffic comparatively. But there's simply not enough units to support unless you want to have $500, $600, $700 a month community fee for each homeowner. I'm using it as an example, but that's just a hard reality that I wish it wasn't here, but it is. What I looked at, there are some builders that approached me. They were looking at units, 500, 600, 700, 800, I don't want that.
You're talking 500,000,
Yeah,
600,000.
that's a scary number. I remember being in a number of public meetings where other developments were proposed, and I'm not talking about Mark because he's sitting behind me, but the people in this township, which I'm a part of, want quality, they want location, but they cannot afford $500,000, $600,000, $700,000 units. There has to be a happy medium. That's what we designed. We're looking at, I believe we can do it, starting around 290. The issue now is, of course, getting materials. You mentioned about the pandemic. It's really been a nightmare for all developers. But I will not do a development where entry level is $495. I don't think we would sell any, but more importantly, I would have some very irritated people. So I'm going on record saying that is the methodology. How this was put together is to minimize traffic, still have it, if you had 10 units, it wouldn't be financially sound for me to do this. So it has to make some financial sense, but I also don't feel like we need to charge the citizens an arm and a leg. Now, this type of community doesn't use school services, rarely uses police services, but generates a lot of tax revenue. I think it's a win-win. By right, we could do apartment, high-rise, nursing home, memory loss, some retail. I don't want to put any of that on this site. That's my whole point. But as far as the CCRC question, not on this site. I would love to do a real CCRC, but we need 150 acres. Can't do it any less. That makes sense.
I see that you're going to have a master bedroom down with a 2-story up. Have you looked at S&A over there on Devonshire Road? That's what they put in, and it seems like all that building came to a halt really.
Agreed.
And I from what I'm hearing, a lot of people have went over there and looked, and they're like, I don't want an upstairs.
I was actually, this particular builder, who I happen to know personally, quality, but they're not in this township yet. I don't mean to ignore it, I just can't move. I have walked through the physical units that we plan on putting here. They're built, they're selling at another location, different county. First floor master bedroom, typically what they alter to what people ask for, and the general consensus, first floor master suite, second floor guest room, which might be the kids or grandkids. The second potential bedroom on the second floor usually ends up being office/hobby room with the Jack and Jill bathroom in between, with the larger than normal landing. So the second floor most of the time would not even go all the way over to the front of the building. But this builder is quality. When I submit the land development plan, I will introduce you. But I have physically walked through the units that we're looking to do. And I think they'll do very well here.
Okay. I was just concerned because of the ones.
I don't want to
over by-
make the same mistake, not at all. And that's why I interviewed half a dozen builders. I visited their sites, and I particularly chose this particular one.
Okay, great. Thank you for explaining. Continual care retirement community.
Yes.
It just took a while.
I hope someday to come before you with one, but I really need 150 acres.
Okay. Thank you.
Any further questions for the applicant?
Well, I, for one, just wanted to thank you for taking the community into consideration when you're making plans like this. As a nurse practitioner, we know that, that the population is aging. We've read the letter from Dauphin County Planning, saying that they approve of this. I've seen myself throughout Dauphin County that, Dauphin County is approving, for land to be changed to this because we know that our population is changing. But I really do appreciate, and I've got to say, we've seen throughout Dauphin County and other counties where we're changing zonings like this, that they are putting in higher, buildings that are,
Well, they're more profitable.
4-story,
That's
5-story.
the reality.
Yeah. So I, for one, I just wanted to say thank you for taking our township and municipality and our people into consideration when you make
You're
plans like
very
this.
welcome. Very
Thanks.
welcome.
Anything further from the board? Okay. We'll just move on to the public hearing. This is time and date set for the public hearing on Ordinance 21-06, amending Chapter 203 of the zoning ordinance, Section 303A, to rezone land from R1 low-density residential to the institutional district. Is there anyone in the audience that wishes to be heard on Ordinance 21-06? Yes, in the back? If you could just please come to the podium and state your name and address.
Hello, Sandy Prawl. My address is 1001 Homestead Avenue, Harrisburg. And that is, if you looked at the map again, it's right across Colonial Road from this property. And so I live up that street.
You need a chair.
I live up Central. So all. No. Here's the triangle. Here's the triangle right here. Yes. So I drive up that side of the triangle. These are residential homes here. And there's a residential home there, and all this property is zoned R1. So I thank you for whoever sent me the information about this possible zoning change. I was not aware of when the first property was rezoned. But I do urge you to consider turning lanes. I have been rear-ended trying to turn into Central. And so there is a problem with the traffic. There's a lot of traffic on Colonial Road, but there's not enough space to get by often if somebody's turning. And so therefore, I urge you to consider some turning lanes into your entrances. Now, I would like to mention the Declaration of Restricted Covenants that Mr. Kessler has signed, or for Vanguard, and it's waiting for the township to sign it. What I want you to be aware of, I don't know if you've read it. Is it in your packet?
I do not believe so.
The township does not sign it. It's
Oh.
just to declare it. It's not between the township and Vanguard. Just a declarant puts it on record.
Oh, well then, okay. Okay, thanks. Well, what it is, what he's signing is that the covenants and restrictions as set forth in this declaration shall be binding upon the landowner, its successors and assigns, and shall run with the land in perpetuity and bind the property. The problem is the next part of the sentence, where it says, provided that the property is developed in accordance with an approved land development plan for a residential retirement development. It says nowhere in here that they have to develop that type of a development. When the information was presented to the Planning Commission, twice the representative from HRG mentioned to the members that once land is rezoned to institutional, then any use in that zoning is able to go on the land. Then they were told that the developer would, or Mr. Kessler, would sign a restrictive covenant agreement. But they had not seen what was in that agreement. It also says that Lord Paxton Township shall have the right, but not the obligation, to enforce this declaration. It says also that the terms and the provisions of this declaration may only be modified or amended by an instrument in writing executed by A, the landowner, or its successors are assigned, after approval by Lord Paxton Township, which such approval by the township shall not be unreasonably withheld. In other words, if Mr. Kessler sells this land to somebody else, they come in and convince, perhaps it's not your board, another board, that they want to do something else. I mean, this could change. This declaration, to me, is not very binding. So it says what he'd like to do. It says what he will agree to if it is a residential development. But if it isn't, there are no restrictions. It goes back to the institutional zoning. So I'm just hoping that you as a board have the opportunity to read this agreement to what they are agreeing to. And yourself. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wishes to be heard? Yes, Mr. Minsker?
Good evening. My name is Bill Minsker, 5956 Linglestown Road rear in Linglestown. Could we go to the site map that was visible there for quite a while?
This one, sir?
Yes.
Sorry. Bring it down to
That stretch of Colonial Road, the oldest part of Colonial Road, south of Linglestown Road, is the longest flat, open stretch of Colonial Road of that section until you get to Linglestown Road between 22 and Linglestown Road. In reference to the discussion was being given to turn lanes, I would propose, and I am a big advocate, as many people know, of traffic circles, roundabouts. And I think both of those intersections there would be perfect for roundabouts for two reasons. It slows down the traffic. And when you travel on that section of Colonial Road, people blow through there at a speed limit of 35, but it's ignored. I think it's 35 there. But traffic circles, roundabouts, slow down the traffic, but they also keep it moving, and they would give the persons in this new development easy access and easy exit to and from that development. So I'm just suggesting that whomever gives some consideration at that flat section, that's an open, flat, visible area without difficulty of sight distance, to consider two roundabouts there. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Kessler, do you wish to say something additional?
I do. Not a bad idea, Bill. Bill and I sat on the Linglestown committee. I chaired it for 12, 13 years, where we finally got the roundabouts through, and it's a hell of an idea. But to answer Bill's input and Sandy's input, Colonial Road is a state road. We have to deal with PennDOT. As you know, I have to get an HOP. We have to meet the requirements as set forth by PennDOT. To be honest, I hadn't thought about a roundabout, Bill, and I will bring that up, but myself, my engineers, potentially Jay, ultimately we will sit before PennDOT, and they will look at our traffic data, their traffic data. They will look at turning lanes, because there is some data that says sometimes if you over-improve something, it increases the accidents. They have the data. So my point is, Colonial Road is sort of out of our hands, but I am more than happy to include the recommendations, because I don't have an argument with them, with what was put up between Sandy and Bill. But it's ultimately not even your choice. I don't believe it's a PennDOT matter.
Right.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that wishes to be heard on ordinance 21-06?
I'll be very brief. The restrictive covenants provide that there'll be no buildings over 3 stories or higher. There'll be no more than 270 dwelling units. There'll be no commercial. There'll be no office buildings. That's in there. So it's read under context, and I sent it to Ms. Sproul's attorney, and he didn't have any questions or comments on it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else who wishes to be heard on ordinance 21-06? Seeing no response, Mr. Chairman, it would be in order at this time to close the public hearing on ordinance 21-06, and the board may take action if it so desires.
Thank you very much, Mr. Stein. So we have before us action to approve ordinance 21-06. Would any member of the board care to make a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve action approving ordinance 2106, amending chapter 203 of the zoning ordinance, section 303A, to rezone the land from R1 low-density residential district to the institutional district, based upon all the discussions that we've had in the previous plans that were approved by the Planning Commission.
So moved. Is there a second?
I'll second it, Mr. Chairman.
It has been moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed? Okay, the ordinance is approved. Thank you, Mr. Kessler.
Thank you very much for your time.
Now we need to move to 10B, which is action on a preliminary and final subdivision plan for Wind Chase 3, Plan 21-14. And this is a plan that we have discussed over many, many, many meetings. I will point out that I had a plan for how information would be presented, and that plan included putting this on a workshop last week. And Mr. DeSanto was here and went through a rather lengthy presentation on the outcome of his exploration into all the various suggestions that had been made. Unfortunately, nobody was here. So, Mr. DeSanto, if you could come to the podium and give us a recap of that for the folks that are here today. Hopefully we won't, well, you pretty much have to go through the whole thing all over again.
Good evening. Mark DeSanto with Triple Crown Corporation, and as the chairman said, we were here last week and we provided a lot of information and looked at a lot of options that were suggested. So I will go through the response letter that we provided to the township and the exhibits, and happy to address any questions there. One of the issues that we have to deal with is the cul-de-sac limitations, and Section 503 prohibits a cul-de-sac that is over 600 feet. To run a cul-de-sac from Wind Chase 2, it would be over 1,000 feet. So to not have a condition that we were in violation of the ordinance, we'd have to run the through street through to Colorado anyway. So given the concerns of traffic, I think it would only be worsening the situation by having a through street from down at Wind Chase 2. There's a steep slope ordinance. It's Section 310B through F that discourages alterations of slopes in excess of 15%, removal of mature trees, and prohibits driveways with grades in excess of 10%. And to achieve the access up from Wind Chase 2, we'd have slopes that would be in excess of the 10%. To do a crossing over from Wind Chase 2 up into the community, where we've discussed this before, there'd have to be a stream crossing, wetlands disturbance, and on the DEP general permit, General Permit 7, there's a section 13.x that states crossings of wetlands shall be avoided if an alternative location is possible. So it's actually a box that needs to be checked, and we would have to say that we do have an alternative option. So our professionals believe the ability to get a general permit to cross that stream is not a high probability or possible. In addition to this, crossing the stream would add about 400 feet of additional roadway at 24 feet wide, which is about 9,600 square feet of impervious coverage, about a quarter acre of additional impervious coverage. We've discussed this before. The residents have stated there's stormwater issues, and to create more impervious, it's not going to help the situation. In addition, if we had to bring a road across from Wind Chase 2 across the stream, we'd have to put a fill area over the sewer. That would be about approximately additional 12 feet of fill. And I know the sewer authority, we've talked these discussions before, they wouldn't allow you to put that much fill over the sewer line because it'd be so deep at that point you couldn't make repairs to it. We talked about the low impact from traffic. Back in June, when we had our first meetings, one of the residents requested that we do a traffic report. We'd had a report dated July 12th, 2021. We submitted that. Peak hours would be 11 a.m. peak hour, and there would be 15 11 a.m. peak hour trips and 15 additional peak hour trips. Total estimated trips would only be 118, and that was only a 1% increase in the design area, which includes Prince Street. Basically, the traffic impact would be negligible from these 21 units. We then did an additional study, a letter study that was done in October 12th of this year, and it was determined, we tried to look at whether we could make Utah one-way and Colorado one-way to avoid confusion and additional parking, make one-side parking only. And the letter basically stated from our traffic engineer that the one-way would probably be more confusing in that area than keeping the traffic two-way. And the street widths meet the PennDOT design requirements for a local street. So the one-way street would also probably generate higher speeds, so it was not recommended as a positive solution. We were asked to talk to McNaughtons, who we've had I'll use the term, a friendly, competitive relationship over the years. McNaughtons have no interest in selling the ground that they have. And I also mentioned to the board last week that one of their concerns, which is the concerns that the residents have here, it'll just flip-flop that concern over into their development. We've talked previously where we've had this plan reviewed by EMS, fire, and the police chief, and they all approved the access point with no comments. Additionally, at the request of the board, we went out there again with Chief Kashiba in September and October, and his letter states Colorado Avenue would be the best alternative for traffic management and public safety for this area. So we've listened to the board. We've looked at all the possible alternatives. We've tried to address the residents' concerns as much as we possibly can. And it appears from all the professional guidance, the township staff guidance, and the police and fire and EMS, that this is an appropriate access point. So with that, we would ask the board to approve the plan and the waivers as presented this evening. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Mrs. Zerby, do you have anything to add to what you've already presented on this?
No, I do not.
I do have one question for you relative to the waivers. Waiver request number 3 was supported by staff, contingent upon the applicant providing a certification with supporting documentation from a licensed geotechnical engineer that the soils can support the proposed slopes, and this waiver had to do with the grading of the slopes. Have we received that documentation? It looks like you may have it in your hands.
Let's see.
And as we look, just a reminder that everything we're talking about tonight is on the website. Everything that was outlined at the last meeting, which Mr. DeSantis presented, that's on last meeting's agenda page. So if you're not taking notes quickly enough or anything, it's all there.
We did provide the geotechnical report as requested. I know it's submitted if you don't have it in front of you.
But it has been provided to us.
Yes, absolutely it has been.
Okay. Now, we will take public comment. Let me just ask this. We have had several very lengthy meetings and heard a lot of comments. And I would ask that we not repeat everything a third or fourth time, but if you have new questions or new issues, if you wish to question Mr. DeSanto about any of the due diligence that they've done on the suggestions, many of which came from people in this audience, we certainly will entertain those. But if we can try not to replow the field again, that would be helpful. So are there any members of the public who would like to ask questions or address the board on this issue? This would be the time. Yes, ma'am? Mr. DeSanto, if you could just sit at the table here, that would prevent you from having to pop up and down. And also then our vast television audience can hear everything that you have to say.
My name is Krista Snook. I live in 5000 Colorado. Was there any more thought about putting a light on Prince Street with the traffic and trying to turn in that area? Was that ever, I know we mentioned it, the board mentioned it last time.
I don't remember. I don't remember anybody
I don't
bringing
think
up the issue of a
Ms.
light.
Robin, you said that you had problems turning in Prince Street, that you had to wait a while to be able to turn on Utah?
I don't remember saying that.
It's-
The residents were talking about a light, but we had no questions about putting a light there, because I'll be right up front with you, I don't think the state would allow that.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
because that's,
You would,
know,
you would actually have a better chance of getting a light and getting the numbers up after the plan is put in and there's traffic. If they did a count now, it certainly wouldn't warrant it.
Okay. The other question I have is, I may have missed the meeting, but is there any discussion about using the Indiana street where there's no houses? Or was that thrown out, or I don't know, as using the street instead of Colorado? Was that just shut down and that was it?
Well, it's a public street, so anybody can use it. So when you're saying use it, what do you mean? Bringing in their equipment, making
Instead of using-
Colorado a one-way and then going out Indiana?
Possibly, yes, because there are no houses there that, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Our access point is from, our access is onto Colorado. We did look at trying to make Colorado one way and the other road coming up one way. And the recommendation from the traffic engineer was not, that was not an appropriate plan.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Would anybody else like to address the board or ask, please come to the podium and give us your name and address. Ma'am in the blue sweater, if you would. Thank you.
And I think in particular, what you just talked about, that's an attachment as well on the last
Yes,
meeting.
yes, ma'am. Oh, Mr. Judd is talking
Go
to
ahead,
Mr.
ma'am.
DeSanto. Sorry to
My name
confuse
is
you.
Patricia Shaver. I live at 5008 Colorado Avenue. About, I don't know if it was 1 or 2 meetings ago, Chairman made the statement that he can see that by dumping all these cars onto Colorado Avenue is going to cause a traffic issue and it's going to cause a safety issue. He said that out loud in a public meeting. And his responsibility to the citizens, all the citizens of the township, is to protect them. And if Colorado Avenue is opened up, it's going to be a problem. And it won't be a problem if they just simply obey the ordinances the way it's written. The ordinance says no new development unless it's 32 feet wide. Colorado Avenue is only 30 foot wide. So I'm respectfully requesting that the waiver to use our little 30-foot wide street, which goes up and turns down into 27 foot wide. I mean, it's 5 feet below the standard when you get up around the curve, that this waiver be denied.
That is not what the waiver is asking. The waiver does not impact Colorado. The waiver that is being requested is a waiver on the street within the new development, not Colorado.
But they're pouring onto Colorado.
But the waiver that they're asking for is to not have wider streets in their development than what Colorado currently is. So the ordinance does not address the existing street. The ordinance addresses the street that is proposed to be built.
Well, that
Yeah,
sort of isn't-
the cartway through the development calls for 32, and they're asking for the cartway to be 30, which is the same cartway at Colorado at the widest point.
Right.
Which
Yes,
is
I understand that the Colorado, anything new has to be 32.
Just for clarification, the waiver is for the frontage that we have on Colorado. We would have to expand that 1 foot on our side, Colorado. And it would be very weird when you're driving down Colorado that's 30 feet, and then you'd have just this little 1 foot extension where our frontage is. So staff and township engineer said, that kind of made sense. You just don't want to widen Colorado 1 foot on our side for the length of the frontage on it.
How would it be 1 foot, Mark, if the cartway was 32?
Well, Colorado's 30. You'd
Right.
have to widen it 1 foot on one side and 1
okay.
foot on
I'm
the
sorry.
other side.
Okay, you're
So
right. Okay.
that would be the 32
Okay.
feet.
Yeah, the ordinance does not address Colorado, and the waiver is for his development, not Colorado itself.
Right, it's just that frontage on Colorado, yes.
Okay, and the other two waivers that I would ask you to kindly decline would be the one for the curbing around the center area. I mean, I don't think they should be given any, according to the zoning board, when you set it up, it has to do with, how did it say that? Undue hardship to the developer. The only thing that's costing him is money. He's got to spend money to make money. And he just wants to do the easy way out. And I'm sorry, he's going to ruin the lives of the people that live on Colorado Avenue, and that just should not be allowed.
That curbing is not affect Colorado Avenue. That curbing is within his development.
Correct, but it's also a waiver he's given.
Could be, yes.
Could be, yes.
So if we denied the waiver, all that'll happen is he'll put in curbing.
Okay. Whatever.
Doesn't change the impact on Colorado Avenue at all.
And if I may respond,
Yes.
I mean, the curbing request is for two purposes. We don't ask for waivers unless there's a reason, and the reasons are one, for snow removal on the property, and it's also that will allow stormwater to drain into those green areas and infiltrate. So they're reasonable. There's reasons for it. And Mr. Chairman, you're right. If the board says no, yes, we put the curbing in. But we ask for a reasonable cause, we believe.
And ma'am, I think I understand you're saying, right here, sorry, here you go, ma'am, over here.
Over here,
Sorry.
Mr. Judd.
And I'm sorry, I don't want to prolong this, but, I think I hear you saying, if they're there, if you don't have to grant the waivers, don't grant the waivers.
Correct.
Make them earn it. But if they show to our staff why the waivers are justified, if our professionals say we agree, they're justified, and then we say, well, we don't want to make it easy for you, so we're going to deny them, then the township could be taken to court. The same way if we just deny it without, even though they're meeting their legal requirements, if we deny it, they'll take us to court. If we deny waivers when the professional staff is saying these are justified, and we're in court, a judge will use that as, hey, why did you do this when your own people told you, that these were justified and they make sense? So, we can't just do things, to just make things difficult or like that. We have to follow the law.
So the board's just running scared of every developer in the township because they're afraid they're going to be taken to court?
No, that is not the case, ma'am.
Yeah, it
The
is.
board is required to follow the law. And in this particular case, not only is the law very clear, but we have had experience at it, as I have said before in public meetings. If the developer complies with all rules, regulations, laws, ordinances, everything, of which there are probably thousands by the time you get through all of us between state, local, and everything else, if they meet all the requirements, they have a right under law to do the development. We do not have the authority to tell them no if they have met all the requirements. Now, we tried that once over with a proposed development at the intersection of Colonial and Lingelstown Road, where we felt that the proposed development would create a serious traffic issue. And so, despite the fact that the developer met all the requirements, we turned it down. Developer took us to court. Judge McNally, in a strongly worded opinion, overturned our decision. And, I hate to say it, but, the judge applied the law as it was written, and many of us here like judges who actually apply the law as written. Judge McNally did that. He said, look, you cannot do this. So he's already ruled that way once. He may not be even that kind if we were to be back in front of him again in another matter. So it's not a matter of being scared of developers. It's a matter of the law gives property owners rights. And the property owner has a right to develop within that context. And we do not have the power to tell them no. So were we to vote no on this, we would be voting contrary to law. Mr. DeSanto would have the right to take us to court. We know how Judge McNally will rule. We'll spend tens of thousands of dollars on legal fees. We know what will happen. So, the outcome is preordained.
So then it's a moot point.
What's that?
It's a moot point?
Well, it's a moot point. However, I will say this, that the process, and we've taken many months to discuss this. I know many of you were before the Planning Commission for a couple of meetings. Many of you have been here. We've spent a lot of time talking about it. We had a lot of recommendations and suggestions from members of the public. We took those suggestions to Mr. DeSanto, who did his due diligence in examining each of the suggestions that we took to him. Unfortunately, the end result of the process is there is but one entry point that is acceptable under law. So, I think the process is that, we did examine every option that was brought before us. And so that brings us to a point where we have to make a decision. And really, our only decision is to follow the law or not.
Irregardless of what the residents on Colorado Avenue say, feel, whatever.
Under law, yes.
Unfortunately, when the other episode happened, it cost us a lot of money, and that was taxpayers' money that we had to spend to fight it, and we ended up losing.
Well, as I told you in my letter to the board, we'd go get a GoFundMe page for you.
Well, you'd be wasting your money. You can't win. We've already been that route. Not only can you not win, but the judge would probably sanction this board in the township for going against him a second time when he made it very clear what the limits of our authority is. And, the fact of the matter is that Colorado is a public street. The developer owns the property. The owner of property have development rights for their property because
he
it's
doesn't
private.
own it yet. He has an option to purchase it.
Well, that's irrelevant. The fact of the matter is the fact of the matter is once this is approved, it's his property. He has an agreement to do it. So, the bottom line is he owns the property. It's his. He's complied with. We've had the county planning commission, the township planning commission. We've been back to the staff on several different occasions. We've been before the police, the public safety director, and everybody else. We've reviewed all the options. This is probably the most thorough vetting of anything that I can recall this board going through. But the bottom line is every step of the way, every planning commission has recommended approval. And he has met all the requirements. So how do we go before a judge and say, despite the fact every planning commission recommended approval, all the professionals said it can be done, he's met all the requirements, what do you say to the judge?
It's not in the people's best interest.
The judge won't care. The judge rules on the law. That's what judges do. I wish we had more discretion in these matters. Would love to, but we don't. Anybody else like to address the board? Yes, sir. Please come to the podium.
My name is Eric Sprout. I live at 5007 Utah Avenue, the fourth house in, right here. I just want to thank you guys for everything that the board has done for this whole process, going through the questions and everything to make sure that we can do what we can. I'm pretty much just here because it's basically because of the traffic issue. And I know you said don't keep bringing up the same things, but there's a question at the end of this. So because I'm on Utah, I see traffic up and down all day long. As someone else in a previous meeting stated, I think it was a gentleman from Ashwood, he said people cut through the neighborhood. I spent a lot of time actually growing up on Utah, and I know that there didn't used to be stop signs there. It was just straight through. And they've added stop signs because of a traffic issue. So it's already a known thing that has happened in the past. Not really the point, but they did a traffic study, and the traffic study states that there's only going to be 118 trips, which gives a 1% increase, and that's negligible. Well, that 1% for Prince Street means that there's 10,000, and it has it in the study, there's 10,333 cars going up and down Prince Street, average daily traffic. That's a lot of cars on such a short street. So you divide that by hour, 430 cars per hour. There's not that many cars going up and down the middle of the night, so that's maybe 500 cars during the day. Break that down a little more, now you're at least 8 cars per minute going up and down. That's getting on, getting off, and that's for every single street up and down Prince Street. So my question is does Lower Paxton have a no-build limit for traffic? Like if there's an excess of cars, if you know that you're going to add another 100 cars to the already 10,300 cars that go up and down every day, do you have any no-build thresholds or limits for that?
No, and we cannot.
Is there a reason that that's not a...
Maybe Mr. Stein could address it, but it's my understanding that state law does not allow us to turn down the development based on, now, I mean, the state might require turning lanes, traffic signals, things of that sort, but we can't just say no. Is that correct?
That's correct. The law says you cannot deny a plan because it might increase traffic.
Okay.
In fact, doesn't the state actually require us to have to allow for so many buildable lots or so much building per year? Sorry.
I don't think.
I think there's like that we have to allow. So let's say they build on this, but then don't we have to allow for zoning? Isn't that we have to allow so much for a certain type of building? No, is that not true?
No.
Okay. All right.
There is. You have to allow for every use, and you also have to allow. You can't discriminate in housing for different reasons. So that would be.
Maybe that's what
I think that might be what you were thinking about. Okay. You can't, and that's because you can't discriminate against multifamily properties as opposed to single family and so forth.
Sure. Yeah, he was just saying that the housing. I mean, could you not hear him?
No.
Through the mic? Oh, okay. That
pull the microphone a little closer.
That the state just kind of mandates it. That I'll let you.
It's actually the Federal Housing Authority. You can't discriminate against multifamily properties versus single families. You have to allow for all types of residential uses.
To answer the question of the gentleman, Mr. Sproul, the township ordinance wouldn't even require a traffic study for development this small. And we actually, we provided the traffic letter and information as additional information to help support this. So we kind of went over and above what was required, and then did the secondary analysis of the one-way. But it wouldn't even be required under the ordinance.
Gotcha. And I understand that, and I appreciate you guys doing that. But that was just my question is, I mean, over 10,000 cars going up and down a road that's 3/4 of a mile long.
I know.
It seems crazy, and then, adding another 100-some cars to that.
Well, if we get to a point where, and I don't think there's much more developable land in that general neighborhood area. If we get to a point where the traffic flows warrant a traffic signal, turning lanes or whatever, we can do the study and make those applications at that time. However, right now, there's not enough traffic coming off of the residential streets onto the main artery to justify it. And we can't just plop a traffic signal in. It has to meet certain numbers and all those sorts of things. Right now, it doesn't sound to me like this development is going to add enough of traffic that it would warrant a light eventually. But we'll have to monitor the situation closely. If it does, we'll do that study at that time.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Would anybody else like to address the board? Yes, sir.
Mark Huntington, 5020 Colorado Avenue. I'm one of the 5 or 6 houses that have the cliff behind them. I'm the central one of the houses that have the steepest cliff with this property. What I never got out of this so far is what they're going to do on the property line of the 5 to 6 houses that are on edge right there. We have a direct cliff coming down that only the vegetation now keeps them from falling down, the old trees that are there. What's going to happen? Are they going to do anything? I mean, is it going to be like a, it all fell into your yard and we have nothing we can do about it? Is it an act of God, or what's going to happen? I didn't know if there was a plan for this. The cliffs, you're talking cliff as high as this behind my house, so I want to know on this property edge what the plan is for the property line for the 5 or 6 houses that have a cliff behind them. I'm in the middle of the house of the cliffs, and that's the steepest. The rest of them, it smooths off. But I don't know if everything's going to be cleared out. I don't know if we're going to have a mudslide because there's nothing there, or what's going to happen. There's a fence line there, but once you erode that away, the fence won't be there anymore. It'll be falling over. I just want to know, do we have a plan, what you plan on doing with the property line?
There's a detailed plan, there's a landscape plan, there's a grading plan, there's a erosion sedimentation control plan. I'd be happy to review that with you, one-on-one at your property or after. I don't have the plans with me at this meeting right now, but I'd be happy to review it with you.
Yeah.
So there's no more water coming down the hill than what's coming down now. We have controlled drainage to take it away, and there will be a landscape plan. So it will not be any worse than what condition you have now, if not better.
Well, I just heard a rumor, and I said rumor because I don't know where it came from, that they would leave 8 to 10 feet maybe of what's there now along the fence line, the trees that exist there now. Is that true, or are they taking everything down right up to the end of the property? Do you know that?
I'd be happy to review the plan with you after the meeting. I don't know exactly where you are. I'd have to look at the plan.
I'm
sorry,
dead
but-
center of the cliff. I mean, I'm 3 houses from the end of the street before you come into your turn. And I'm 3 houses up from that, from the lot you use to put your road up through.
Okay, I'd be happy to look at that with you.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Yes, sir.
I'm Dan McLennan at 5030 Colorado Avenue. The last segment of Colorado Avenue, I live at the very, very end of the dead-end street and that. The ADT is probably 10. My understanding is it's going to increase to 118 now, and that's supposed to be good for public safety, the way I interpreted what you guys said, and that this is the best way for public safety, and there was some other variable for that. But I didn't hear anything addressed either about, I have concerns about where the development is going to be and all the impervious area there with the 60 parking spots or whatever. My property is 48 feet below that. And I hear, I know there's the sedimentation ponds or whatever and all like that. But after that's done and all like that, if I do have runoff problems, are they going to be addressed? I had mentioned about possibly building a fence between my property and Mr. DeSanto's property and all like that, and I never heard anything about that, because I know with 21 properties and dumpsters and all like that, I said I had videos of the wind chase 1 and 2 and that, where there was trash, you know, all around the property and that, and I thought, is that something I'm gonna have to concern with? Should I be concerned with that? You know, should I have to deal with, you know, another property owner's trash and water runoff? I haven't heard that addressed, and that's my concerns. That's all I have.
Again, I'm happy to give you my card, be happy to address any of your concerns. If there's any trash, we're very, cautious in cleaning things up, keeping things under control. And if there are any problems, please feel free to give us a call, but I'll be happy to deal with it. And if you have additional stormwater issues, I'm happy to say I'll be happy to discuss that with you at the time. I've looked at your property, we've seen it, we saw how you've kind of channeled the water down the side with some work that you've done, and if we make that situation worse, you have my word, I'd be happy to speak with you and help resolve it. You're welcome.
Anybody else?
My name is Kathleen Jones, and I live at 5006 Colorado Avenue. I did pull the letter off the website prior to coming, and I actually could go down point by point in terms of what he considers valid reasons for not addressing our concerns. Again, a wetland is a legal designation. You do not use it indiscriminately to suit your purposes. You have to have an actual designation by federal or state agencies to call something a wetland. There is no designation of a wetland on any area of that, of Wind Chase 2, Royal Avenue coming in for Royal Court. There's just not a wetland designation. I have a question about the steepness of slopes. You mentioned the steepness of slopes on all sides, but the side in which the road would actually come down from the property. What is the steepness of that slope? Is it greater than 10%? Because the road doesn't come straight down the hill. It actually follows the contours towards the east and then comes down the hill. Did you do that because of the steepness of the slope? Can you give me the actual percentage? Is it greater than 10%? If we have Mr. Huntington's property where he has a cliff behind his house, how can you say that that slope is any less steep than what you're talking about to negate coming in from Wind Chase 2? That's a question.
I'm not following your question, I'm sorry.
Again, very simply, what's the steepness of the slope from coming down towards Colorado Avenue on the properties of 5026 and 5028 that you intend to use as your road entrance into your property?
I don't know that.
And why not, sir?
I don't have the plans in front of me.
And yet you can quote steepness of slope from every other direction. Is that avoidance on your part?
Ma'am, the plan's been reviewed by professional engineers.
Again, you use facts
Yes.
to literally destroy a neighborhood that has been there for years. That we have 3 citizens here in the audience that have lived there for a total of 175 years.
Ma'am, please. You asked a question, and I'm happy to address it. I don't know the answer. I know the slopes
Why?
on the
And I asked
side
why.
because we were asked to investigate other options, and we looked at those very carefully.
And what I'm saying is, just looking at the land and the contours on a map, that slope is just as great as any of the other areas that you are talking about.
I do not agree with you, but I do not know, and I'm not going to make a number up when I don't have the plans in front of me.
Well, you've done similar things in the past, though, so my expectation of you. Would you expect you to throw out a number and have me believe it? Okay, so you didn't know that. Where is your courtesy to me? Oh, I'll talk to you. You want to talk to me about the plans? I'll talk to you individually. You extended that courtesy to others. Why not to me?
Kathleen,
Okay.
I would be happy to do the same. You've never called that I'm aware of. You've never asked me.
Right here, right in this room, right now. You extended it to others, to Mr. McGlynn and to Mr. Huntington, but not to me.
Ma'am, if you wish Mr. DeSanto to meet with you, it's my understanding from the last two individuals that addressed the board that he would be happy to meet with you and address any questions you have about slope or runoff or whatever. He does not have that particular plan in front of him at the moment. However, he would be happy to meet with you.
Okay.
Well, I'll tell you why not. Why not is because he has been through this process with staff and two planning commissions, and we have had multiple meetings on the issue. And, you know, to bring every document in here is not a realistic expectation. You have specific questions about specific areas of the proposed development. He is happy to meet with you to discuss those specific areas.
Okay. Another question I have is, what is the weight limit for trucks on residential streets? And who is going to monitor that he abides by that weight limit so that the streets that we have to travel on are not damaged by construction vehicles?
Let me address that, because the board has had a discussion about that issue. Your street, Colorado Avenue, is not on the plan for resurfacing in the immediate future. However, in view of the fact that this construction will occur and that there will be vehicles on it, and obviously since construction occurs all over the township, the type of vehicles and the weight that they are use township streets all the time because we have construction going on all over the place. He's going to be able to run heavier trucks and equipment on Colorado Avenue. We obviously don't want to do anything to the street right now before this construction occurs. After the construction is done, we are going to have our Public Works Department reevaluate Colorado Avenue, and if there is significant damage, we will move it up at that point on the list of streets to be repaved.
And again, I see this as a pattern of the township residents are always paying for the problems that are created by developers. Even to this day, and I realize this goes back to the 50s, the soil in our yards are still in the process of being amended from being scraped, the topsoil being scraped off in the 50s.
Well, can I ask you to please stay in this decade?
Okay.
Or we'll be here all night.
I'm just showing that what they do, we end up paying for in the long run. Okay, I'll leave it at that. And this bears repeating. The Township Comprehensive Plan of 2018 states, and you made a comment in another meeting that these weren't just pretty words on paper, that actions by the township are to strengthen and protect older neighborhoods. Again, these houses were built in the 50s, and avoid traffic problems. And to me, the action that you're going to approve tonight does neither of those. Does absolutely neither of those. It neither strengthens our neighborhood, nor does it avoid traffic problems. You're already talking about the possibility of going back and looking at the data for a traffic light.
Ma'am,
Okay?
did you not hear what I said earlier?
All right.
The action, and you can bring up all these issues all that you want. However, the law is clear about what we can and cannot do here.
Be specific about that law. You say the law. Be very specific, please.
Mr. Stein, do we have the specific burden citation for this Yeah, I can certainly provide you with the court opinion that Judge McNally wrote.
I would love to see it.
We'll be
Thank you.
happy to provide it.
Yes.
But, we can provide you with the specific citations in law. However, I'm telling you, the law is very clear on this matter. We tested it knowing that it was clear, and we got shot down by the judge. And, we would be in violation of our oaths of office at this point, knowing what the law requires to not follow it. And, we understand it's an older neighborhood. We understand that you've had relative quiet in that neighborhood for many, many decades. However, the gentleman owns the property. He has development rights. The law is clear. We have tried everything we can think of to come up with some alternatives that would be more acceptable. Unfortunately, none of them have worked out. So now it's very clear what it is we have no choice but to do.
Okay, that leads me to number 7 when he spoke to Mr. McNaughton. Mr. McNaughton doesn't want the same concerns to go to his development.
Right.
But there is a definite economic disparity between Wilshire Estates and our street. And so therefore it becomes, to me, an issue of looking at people on Colorado and going, gee, we really can't do much to fight this other than our voice, other than to use our voice.
No.
We have a developer.
Ma'am, look. You have a right to comment. You do not have a right to cast aspersions on people. Okay?
All I'm
listen,
saying is, and it's obvious, economic disparities between Wilshire Estates and Colorado Avenue.
This has nothing to do with economic disparity.
It does.
No, it does not. The McNaughton Company has an approved development on their land, which they own. They are under no compulsion to sell or otherwise alter their development, and they do not wish to do so. That is their right with an already approved development. It has nothing to do with the economic circumstance of the various neighborhoods involved. So you're absolutely wrong in saying that.
And I disagree.
Well, you can disagree. Do you have anything else? Because
Yes,
I think
do.
we've heard
And
about enough.
This is the most important.
All right.
The ethics law prohibits public officials from soliciting or accepting anything of value based on an understanding that a vote, official action, or judgment would be influenced.
Okay, I'm going to stop you.
No.
Shut up!
No.
I am not going to have you stand there and suggest that anybody on this board has taken anything from any developer, let alone this specific developer, because it has not occurred. You may sit down because you are out of order.
I have proof.
Sit.
I have proof that Chris Judd and Paul Navarro both received $500 in campaign finance donations from MDX Financial Properties.
Okay.
They should be
Wrong. Would you please
have a
be
roll
quiet?
call vote, and they should recuse themselves from voting.
You may sit down and let me explain something to you. Under campaign finance laws, contributions can be made to campaign committees. That is wholly different from somebody giving somebody a personal emolument or any sort of a bribe, which is what you're suggesting. You are completely wrong and completely out of order. Sit down.
Impression of conflict of interest. They
There is
received
no
$500
conflict
from
of interest.
Mark DeSanto. His names are on the document.
And that has nothing to do with this issue whatsoever.
Yes, it does.
Sit down.
They are voting.
All right, I'm giving you 10 seconds to sit down, and I'm going to order you removed from the room.
It's all right.
You are not going to stand there and accuse any member of this board of accepting a bribe or anything like that.
I did not say bribe, sir. I said a campaign donation.
No, you intimated a bribe, ma'am.
No, I did not.
Yes, you
no,
did.
I did not.
Well, just sit down and shut up, because I've heard about enough from you. Now, enough. That's the end of public discussion. Is there a motion on this? Everybody was really... let me, before we take a vote, say this. I appreciate the fact that up until the last person, everybody else who addressed the board was very polite and asked questions that were serious and got answers from Mr. DeSanto that were serious as well. And I can say this, that in previous meetings and up until this woman, I really appreciate the fact, I understand that this is an emotional issue for all of you, and I appreciate the fact that most of you acted properly. Regrettably, that didn't extend to the last person. So with that, is there a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve action on a preliminary final subdivision plan for Windchase 3, plant number 21-14,
You also have to take action on the waivers.
and approve the waivers as presented previously and approved by the commission.
So moved. Is there a second?
Can we comment?
After we have a second and put it on the table,
Second.
yes. We have a second. Comments, please.
Obviously, there's nothing you can say if you live on a dead-end street. I've been on Colorado. It's a special place because it is not a through street. There's nothing you can say if that's going to be opened up to traffic that is going to make you feel good about it. There's nothing. Now, what I learned years ago is that you can't, when it's already zoned and developers do the legal requirement, it's too late to stop it, as long as what they do is following the law. That's why one of the first things I did was got involved in the Comprehensive Plan Advisory Committee back in 2004, because that is where you decide future development of the township. You can't do it after everything's zoned and say, we don't want this for A, B, C, and D, even though, traffic and way of life, if you have a dead-end street that's opened up, obviously that's going to be different from the way it was before. But all this time, everything that's been said, everything we've done to push Mr. DeSanto to do more, none of that gets around the reality that opposing things like this would have to happen years ago. And that includes all development. That includes the development that's going on in my neighborhood. And there'll be heavy vehicles moving through. And the township, there's been no promise that they'll move any of the streets around me up on a list if the heavy equipment does any damage. That was unique for you. Just because, well, I can't speak for the others, but just because what an impact this is on your way of life, even though it's unavoidable, it's legal, and I hope, and the evidence indicates it could be the case, that this won't be as bad as everybody fears. I don't know. But we've done everything we can do. As far as campaign contributions, and that's the reason why we would act a certain way up here. And I can tell you, in a township this big, you have to raise a lot of money to run. I'm not a wealthy man. I never will be. But to say or to imply that a $500 contribution is going to make a difference, or that there's anything improper about it, I would disagree with every fiber of my being. This is just the way it is. Like I said, you would have to go back years ago when we're drawing the maps to really oppose future planning. That's why the 2018 comprehensive plan was so important. Same thing. We get together, we get the community volunteers together, we bring in an expert consultant, and he goes through step by step and takes, I don't know, takes almost a year to go through. And that's when these decisions are made. It's been said multiple times, there was another project, and we tried to oppose it because our gut told us the traffic impact was worse than was indicated, and even though they met all the legal requirements, and we got hit pretty bad. And, it didn't hurt us financially. It didn't, it hurt us as taxpayers, hurt the township, but the words that judge used, I'll never forget. And that was implying that we weren't doing our job and weren't keeping our oath when we did that. And I'll never do that again. I will always stick to the letter of the law. And when our staff recommends certain things about waivers that can be waived or not, that's going to have the proper impact. I'm glad we went through this process. I'm glad that the developer took the extra time, and it sounds like he'll take even more extra time. Everything, except for maybe one comment, everything that you residents did was fully understandable, and I totally understand your passion, and you asked all the right questions. You got all the answers you can get as far as what is legally required, and then some. So I hope at least seeing this process play out, except for the end, that you can at least appreciate that we looked at it from every angle, and that the process played out. And I know that's not going to make you feel good. I understand that. Like I said, we have development in our neighborhood, but I just hope people understand about land use and about how decisions are made years ago by other boards and other citizens, and that really does kind of tie our hands. Thanks.
I feel compelled to defend myself as well. Obviously, you don't know me, and obviously emotions are running high, but my grandfather has built one of the first houses. It was off of Garden Circle. I have pictures of this area when it was literally just woods. He was the only house on Garden Circle at the end of Prince Street. I've lived off of Prince. I've lived off of Mauritania. I've lived in Garden Circle. So I understand, and, I won't get offended by what you said, but, if you remember, I was one of the first people that spoke up about the traffic issue and my concerns and kind of fighting against this. But I'm not going to keep beating this to death. But, the point is that, we don't have all power here, no matter what we really want or, what we see. We can't just stop it. And in some ways you wish that you did have that power, but in reality, when thinking about it, I'm glad that I don't, because government is about checks and balances. And, for this gentleman to get to this point, he had to go through so many different processes that probably nobody in this room has ever had to do, and hopefully, we'll never have to do, because I can tell you, we don't make it easy for somebody that wants to develop. We don't make it easy for somebody that wants to build a house. I've built a house, and it's not easy to do, with all of the requirements of the state and, and local government. So, I won't take offense to what you said. You're entitled to your own opinions or whatever, but the facts are the facts, and we fought, very hard for several months. So, but anyway, thank you.
Any other comments? If not, there is a motion on the floor. All in favor of approving the preliminary final subdivision plan for Wind Chase 3, Plan 21-14, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Anybody opposed? Hearing no noes, the plan is approved. We now need to take action on Resolution
Thank you.
21 Thank you, Mark. We still have one more item for you. I don't know if you need to speak to it or not, your planning module.
No.
Yes,
Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you. We need to take action on Resolution 21-27, approving the Wind Chase 3 planning module. Any questions about that? Is there a motion to approve the planning module? Is there a motion to approve the planning
So
module?
moved.
So moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
That brings us to the payment of bills for Lower Paxton Township and the Lower Paxton Township Authority. Mr. Treasurer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As I make a motion to pay these bills, I would like to point out the fact that when I came on this board, I indicated that I would take a look at the checkbook as though it was my own and would not approve something that was frivolous. To know that we would be losing tens of thousands of dollars and drag this township through a legal process that would cost the taxpayers money, I would never do that. So having said that, I've been in a situation in the past where I've made decisions that were by law, and I've been in a position where if I could have used my heart to make the decision, I would have. But I was in a situation where I had to make a decision depending on sometimes people's lives, and they were tough decisions to make. However, as I said, if it would have been my opportunity to make a decision based upon my heart, it would have been different decisions. But I took an oath to protect the Constitution, and that's how I made my decisions. So having said that, I move that we do pay the bills of the Lower Paxton Township and the Lower Paxton Township Authority.
So moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye. Are there any announcements from members of the board?
Yes, we'll be having Sewer Authority next Tuesday at 7 o'clock in this room.
And you're here with the Girl Scouts tomorrow evening.
Right.
Tomorrow evening. Seeing no further announcements, let me wish, sir, we're past public comment time. Thank you.
Continue the discussion of it after the vote.
Pardon me?
I said the council member continue to discuss the decision after the vote.
Well, he is able to make whatever comments relative to the.
Afterwards, I just have one small.
Yes, you may speak with. Oh, certainly, we'll stay here as long as you like. So I was about to wish everybody happy Thanksgiving. Hope you enjoy your holiday. The next meeting of this board will be a business meeting, and we will meet on Tuesday, December 7th at 7 p.m. in this room. With that, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
So moved. Is there a second? All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye. Meeting adjourned.